I have to bring this up. One of Richard Carrier's points has gotten a lot of buzz in the blogosphere, and that is that he said Barabbas was a mythical character. The person that they released instead of Jesus in the Gospels is a myth, because his name means son of the Father.
Barabbas.
What's up with that?
Well, in the first place, it's irrelevant because that's not one of the four facts on which I predicate the resurrection of Jesus. Even if that were an element added to the Markan narrative that is non-historical, it wouldn't affect my case at all. It's very important for listeners to understand that a case for the resurrection of Jesus doesn't depend on the infallibility of the historical records. As Richard himself recognizes, every historical document, no matter how reliable, is going to contain distortions, errors, contradictions, mythical elements or fictional elements, and that doesn't mean that, therefore, the rest of it is untrustworthy. So even if one dismissed Barabbas as unhistorical, it wouldn't affect my case in the least. But I would say that actually we have good grounds for believing that it was part of Roman legal administration of the provinces to listen to what was called acclamatio populi, or the acclaim of the people, and they would allow this sometimes to determine verdicts. There's a case in AD 85 in Egypt where the governor released a prisoner who was supposed to be scourged because of the acclamation of the people. And although that man wasn't a murderer and insurrectionist, as Barabbas was, nevertheless, it could very well be the case that in the extraordinary circumstance of Jesus, that Pilate was willing to let Barabbas go in the place of Jesus because he knew that a riot was about to take place, that these Jewish leaders were fomenting a riot in Jerusalem at the time of Passover, and this could have gotten wholly out of hand, and so he was willing to let Barabbas go. As for the symbolic meaning of the name of Barabbas, well, I don't see why his parents couldn't have given him a name that was charged with symbolic significance. Why think that that had to be Mark's invention? Why couldn't this be the real name of a Jewish man? So I don't think that you can just say something looks symbolic, therefore it's unhistorical. And the conclusions to which this can lead can be absurd, Kevin. In the debate with Carrier, one of the people from the audience asked during the Q&A, well, Dr. Carrier, you think that Simon of Cyrene, who carried Jesus' cross, was just a symbol. But Mark says that his sons, Alexander and Rufus, were there with him. Isn't that a historical reminiscence, as most scholars think? Well, Carrier said, no, I don't think so. He says, I think that Alexander is the symbol of Alexander the Great, and Rufus was a symbol for this Socratic philosopher with a similar name. I can't prove this, but that's my speculation. So you see, just all controls are lost where anything, Alexander the Great and a Socratic philosopher are symbolized here in the Passion narrative. It's just haywire hermeneutics, I think.
I see another strategy here, Bill. It seems that many skeptics of the Christian faith, activists, atheists, secular web, internet infidels, are keying on, and rightly so, the Christians' love and dependence upon the Bible, the Gospels, the New Testament. And if they can erode your confidence in that, then they can take away the rest of it. And take away, and show Christianity's faults. And so it's almost, it's a good strategy. At the same time, what I see here that we often try to do as defenders of the faith and presenters of the gospel, and that is to just show a minimalist fact, apologetic, and then if we get those facts straight, that will actually build our confidence in the rest of the Scriptures.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's right. And actually, this was a point made by the Greco-Roman historian A.N. Sherwin-White with regard to the Gospels. He says, whenever Jesus or the book of Acts moves into the orbit of public knowledge, then he says the external confirmation from ancient sources in history begins, and you can confirm the accuracy of these documents. He says that gives you confidence then when the Gospels are talking about things that are not publicly verifiable, that these same authors are still reliable when it comes to that. So having bracketed the question, say, of Barabbas, you show that the Gospels are very reliable with respect to these central facts that we can verify, and that will then give you confidence that when you go back to Barabbas again, that although we don't have any other external confirmation of the existence of Barabbas, that we're dealing here with a reliable, trustworthy author, and no good reason to deny what he does say about the release of Barabbas.
Can we expect maybe an article from you, an assessment of this?
Well, I've been thinking about it because there's so much material I had that I had prepared for this debate that I was unable to use. For example, I would love to engage Richard with respect to his interpretation of the Church Father Origen. When I looked at what Origen has to say about the resurrection, I thought he had so seriously distorted him as to almost be libelous with regard to Origen's views. And so I would perhaps welcome the opportunity to put some of this material out there on, for example, what did Origen believe about the resurrection body and how it came to be. I think it's very clear he believed in a transformation of the remains of the earthly body that meant that the tomb was empty when Jesus rose again, despite Richard's, I think, misinterpreting Origen. So we'll see.
This is not a grudge match. It's good to have competition. It's good to have a good debate. It's good to get in there. But this issue is so important that we want to look past our heroes. Try to get at the truth. Now, I'm saying that because there are a lot of people listening to this podcast right now who are just angry. They're angry about how effective the historical evidence is for the resurrection, and they just don't want it to be true. Now, I'm just being honest. There's an emotional component that I'm trying to address here. Now, there are also those who are listening right now who genuinely have good questions, and they want to know the good historical evidence. How do we assess arguments and evidence and truth when we have a favorite dog in the fight?
I think, for one thing, you really can't take people's word for it. And I think that's especially the case with Richard. You've got to check out the references. You need to look them up yourself and see if, in fact, what is being said is accurate. And I think when you do that, in this case, you're going to find that he consistently misrepresents and distorts his sources when you look at both sides of the issue and try to dispassionately weigh them. I really do believe, Kevin, that the evidence stands on its own merit if you will just look at it objectively. It's not about people, not about Richard Carey or Bill Craig. It's about the evidence, and the evidence speaks for itself if you're just willing to look at it with an open mind and open heart.